well, the Snyderverse may be gone, but that doesn't mean that DC movies can't stop making DC movies. And well, we finally got the first movie out of that, which is free of the Snyderverse universe kind of movies, and that one is none other than the Blue Beetle. I don't know if this is gonna be a little bit of a short review, mostly because I have absolutely no knowledge about the Blue Beetle. I don't read too much comics like many other people, but so so I'm kind of on the dark when it's about the Blue Beetle. The only thing that I remember is that I only know the Blue Beetle once I saw the gameplay of Injustice 2. That's all I know about that. I don't know the backstory. I didn't do kind of like a research of the character because, well, I got lazy on that one. So, so going to the movie was a little bit of a benefit for me because that gave me some low expectations what to expect from the movie. Even the trailers that didn't seem too bad. I kind of found out that it's gonna be a fun movie. It's gonna be one of those. Well, the typical origin story of a superhero movie. It's not gonna. It doesn't it tell it is not overly ambitious like a lot of superhero movies that came out this year. So so I just went there kind of with low expectations, but I was very open minded to accept what it is. So so there, this is the whole thing that I gotta say to introduce myself about Blue Beetle. See, it's gonna be brief, so probably this is gonna be a short review. Not necessarily gonna be a bite size like I usually do, because there's some things that I gotta talk about. But right in the get go, I will say this. I enjoyed this movie a lot than I expected. I could probably say that this is probably the best superhero movie I have seen this year. Well, maybe this is a little bit out of a personal touch, considering that this year we got Across the Spider Verse, in which many people consider that is one of the best this year, and well, Guardians of the Galaxy, I can consider it superheroes because, well, they're not super. Well, they're heroes, and so maybe they're kind of like superheroes. You know what? Scratch that. Probably I will say that Blue Beetle is probably one of the best DC movies I have seen this year. Uh, this year. So maybe saying that is one of the best superhero movies I have seen this year. Maybe I kind of overhyped it because, well, I think that this movie does deserve to be seen and give it a chance. That I've been hearing that not many people are kind of giving it a chance. But I'm mostly highly optimistic about that one because let's say that while it is a movie that is on the base level, it is still an origin generic superhero movie, but it plays all the cards so right that what does things right, it does a lot of things right, and it came out kind of with a superhero movie that that I found it charming, especially with some of the stuff that kind of throws into you and it makes me feel kind of like familiar. But again, I don't want to overhype it because I'm not that kind of guy. Although there is a little bit that I do want to. This is mostly my critique on some how they marketed this movie because this movie it's kind of overhyping and like saying that hey, you're gonna get the first Latin American superhero, the first Latino being a superhero and all that, and that I kind of doubt it, but at the same time, I'm not exactly knowledgeable about well, which is first and all that. And but you know what? The journalism always tend to overhype things to the point that it gets so cheesy. So so let's talk a little bit about the story in which the story centers around this guy named Jaime Reyes. He lives with a he lived with his family, Los Reyes. He graduated from university, and everyone is proud of him. So when he finds out that they have that the family is in an economical bind, he decides that, well, I'm gonna help out and try to get a job. And he kind of gets the chance when he meets Jennifer Cord, which is one girl that works in this and work kind of works in this what was it in this big corporation called Cord Company or something like that. And then he gets mixed out when he received from her kind of like a blue scarab that came out from outer space. And apparently the blue scarab chooses him, it integrates into his body, and well, the superhero origin story comes out in which he turns into the Blue Beetle, and basically because of that, he's been targeted by the head of the Cord Company, which is this woman who wants to harness the power of the Beatles so she can she can create her own army of super armor soldiers. And that's basically the gist of the story. When it's about superhero stories, most of the time it's difficult to put it into a small synopsis because here's the thing: superhero movies has come into a long way to create a multifaceted story that you can't just simply tell it for with simple words. But luckily, I found the Blue Beetle simple enough for me to give it a kind of like a simplicity out of it. And again, it follows all the pacing of the superhero genre. We got our protagonist who is brilliant. He's brilliant. He has a future. And then he comes in a situation that is out of his luck, and then finds a magical artifact, or sometimes gets involved into a twist of fate that gives him superpowers. And from this point on, he has to take control of that situation in order to protect the things that he loves. And that's the Blue Beetle in a nutshell. There's kind of like nothing very special, but sometimes we need a little bit of cliche, and thus you don't need to be overly ambitious into the story to make it effective. Like I said, what matters is that you play the cards right, and when you do that, this is where you find the hidden strengths of the movie. Like in this case, like we have the acting. You gotta well, I am a little bit kind of like rolling my eyes and this kind of like this day and age in which Hollywood always tries to find variety on ethnicity group because they just want to say, hey, we got something different from this country or this country. We want to find representation and all that stuff. This kind of always makes me roll my eyes because you can tell that that despite their kind of like good intentions, it comes out a little bit kind of like insincere, or sometimes kind of like they're just looking ways to show off into the movie. Although in this case, I find myself a little bit forgiving, in which they did try to bring out a little bit more representation into the Latin American community. In this case, more they they wanted to try out a little bit more on a Mexican Latino diverse cast. Although most of the time when it's about Latin American and most at this point mostly in superheroes, they mostly concentrate in the Mexico area. It's gonna take a while in which they finally touch on Central America, more other countries from Central America or South America, in which, you know what, here's another pet peeve that it took me a while to get over with, in which I kind of never consider Mexico Latin America, mostly because in the continental geographical kind of knowledge, I always seen Mexico as North America. Kind of hard to showcase Latin America, but there's but honestly, when I think about it in the grand scope, Mexico, Ecuador, Republic Dominican, and all these things, they might have different cultures, but there are some things that are kind of similar. So I can kind of understand this Latin American, this how can I say, this Latin American brotherhood that when you say, okay, this is Mexico, now it represents Latin America and all that stuff. But this is a pet peeve that sometimes it gets the better of me, and I kind of just go flip flop in my own opinions. So yeah, I was talking about the acting, in which, yeah, a lot of the actors, they do a really good job, as well as the character as it is. The main protagonist, Jaime Reyes, he's played by Xolo Maridueña. He does a great job. He does look good for the part. He's handsome. He's a good actor, and the script didn't betray him, because he really plays a likable character. And one of the biggest things that brings a lot of heart into the movie is the whole family dynamic. This movie, because this is a little bit that is also kind of a pet peeve when it's about our representation of Latin America, is that when they bring out Latin Americans, they always have kind of like this family dynamic, in which a lot of the family members are they kind of sometimes they live kind of like together. They always act like a community. They're very supportive of each other, and I'm not saying that everyone is like that, but for the most cases, that's actually true. That it is a little bit of a pet peeve in Latin America, that when a lot of the family members, we are more united as a family union. And this movie kind of showcases a little bit, to the point that it's not even satirical, but a little bit stereotypical. But still, you find some likability into these characters. The family are united; they support each other, even to the point of having cheesiness. And again, it brings out a lot of heart into it. There's even even when they are dealing with an economic situation that, for poor communities, it is kind of relatable. And this kind of brings out a little bit of the contrast that the movie takes place in this fictional town called something Palmera, Palmera City or something like that, and which is you can see that I don't know if this is kind of like Latin America, but that city looks so modernized that it kind of looks like a little bit like Tokyo. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but they live kind of like in the other part where it's kind of like poor, but still the family they might be struggling, but they're happy with each other, and they are determined to fight to the end. So uh, 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 even each family has kind of like their own personalities. Even one of the family members is none other than George Lopez, who he becomes one of the key elements of the movie because let's say that he's the conspiracy guy who apparently his knowledge of mechanics kind of even make him makeshift vehicles, and even a jammer that jams into the security system, in which, funnily enough, he call it Chapulín, the Chapulín, and that is because when he hacks the system with the object, it showcases bits of this Mexican show called El Chapulín Colorado. For those who doesn't know, that's I kind of struggle to kind of call it a superhero show, but it is a comedy show that is very beloved in the Latin American community. So, I'll get to that a little bit. There are other characters there, like, for example, I already told you about Jennifer Court. She's played by Bruna Marqueriza, who is kind of like the outsider of the family, but still she comes off as becoming a little bit part of the family when she meets them, and because she tries to do the right thing. She's very against her, what was it, aunt who took over the company and is turning her, the company that her father built into a weapons facility company. So she basically is the one that takes this alien scarab object off of her hands. And when she realizes that, well, she involved she kind of put the other family in danger, not unintentionally. She becomes part of it, and she kind of becomes knowledgeable out of it. And there's some things that I am not gonna, how can I say, not gonna spoil. There's also, I will say that the villains, the villains is basically kind of like, here's evil corporation that is so rich that they even have power over the police and the government and all that. And the character of Susan Sarandon, which is who plays the villain Victoria Court, is kind of like the mastermind of all this. I will say that she does her role very well to be an unhateable villain, although it's a little bit, how can I say, caricaturized. She's almost like a Final Fantasy VII character. That's very much. And she has her henchman, who is kind of like the brute and the villain of it. And for the shortest moment that he has a little bit of a backstory, it's still effective. Again, I am not gonna reveal so much because I don't wanna spoil too much in the movie. And that and then that comes off with the cinematography, which is, I'm not gonna say too much because it's kind of typical in any superhero movie that they do well. That I kind of like the technology that it goes through the Blue Beetle, which is basically kind of similar to Iron Man, in which whatever the suit of armor activates whenever the character gets into danger, almost like a defense mechanism, and it has this inner voice, kind of like Jarvis in the Iron Man suit, but this time it's a lady, and I gotta a little bit complain that the mechanical voice is sometimes I find it a little bit muffled because I'm very distracted by the action scenes. But there are times that you get used to it, and it works. I also really like the powers of the Blue Beetle, and there is some backstory that they kind of build, and you can tell that they're not gonna reveal all the pieces because the movie feels that the movie does feel confident that there might be sequels. Yes, there's gonna be. Yes, there is some mid-credit scenes. I will say that. Uh, uh, and again, the action scenes are pretty well done. None of that shaky camera thing. It is well done. I like the technology involved into it. I will even say that there is a technology that it is done by building a power glove. That's pretty much all I have to say. Now to talk about a little bit about other elements that I do find with the movie, in which take it a little bit of a nitpick here and there. If there's a little bit that I have to say that I could criticize a little bit about the movie, but again, it's a nitpick, is that I know that they want to expand the Latin America atmosphere and representations here and there. But sometimes I kind of question myself whenever I see these kind of movies. Sorry about the sirens. When there are times in which they talk in English and then rarely they speak Spanish. Because let me tell you, I am from a family of Spanish speaking community. And we speak Spanish almost all the time. Even if we are fluent in English, we don't go around, talking in English, and then one time we talk a little Spanish here and there. So, uh, take it a little. I know that the movie is an American movie, a North American movie. And they don't want to tire out people, making them read subtitles with having all the characters speaking Spanish. But somehow I find this a little bit unnatural when you have clearly a Spanish speaking family, and they talk English all the way, and then sometimes it's almost like they have kind of like a ticking bomb. They say that, okay, time for a Spanish sentence. But again, that's just a little bit of a pet peeve. And also a little bit of a nitpick is that when they want to make representations of Mexico or any other Latin American community, sometimes it kind of lands to the point of being a little bit stereotypical. Like, for example, eating tacos, or making references of Spanish speaking shows. For example, and also when, even though they live in a poor community, you find out that they're basically kind of like overly. Maybe it's a nitpick out of me, but they're very close to the Catholic religion, and they have always put the Virgin Mary statue here and there, because that is kind of actually true. And you know what? Now that I think about it, that kind of helps out in the community, in which they are very close to the religious beliefs that of adopt, the love thy neighbor and love thy family morals that that teaches us. So but again, I'm just kind of noticing a little bit of a nitpick when they try to find some stereotypes in the Latin American community. Sometimes I did notice some things that they kind of uh, connected to Latin American culture. Like, for example, when they show it on TV, they really show really old shows from Mexico. Like, for example, they showcase they reference the soap opera novela. We call it novela, and it is a soap opera called María la del Barrio. Man, that is a really old show, and I don't know if there comes times in which they reprise it on old television, but man, that is old. And also there was a little bit of a small bit in which they show this Mexican variety show called Sábado Gigante. That show was canceled kind of like, what was it, 15 or 10 years ago, and man, that it made me feel, wow, that made me feel really old. But I did find it cute that they did reference going back to El Chapulín Colorado. Again, El Chapulín Colorado it was a comedy show. It's a comedy show about this guy dressed in red, and who is basically a superhero to the community. But again, it is a comedy. It's mostly played out for laughs. But I did find it cute, and it's so cute that they made him kind of like a tribute at the very end of the credit. Yes, I will tell you that you're not gonna miss much during the post-credit scenes, but stay up to the end, because the tribute to the Chapulín Colorado at the end, it's actually kind of cute. And I kind of began to put the pieces together when I finished it, and I was like, oh, I get it. Blue Beetle, Chapulín Colorado, which is the kind of like two opposites. For those that doesn't know, Chapulín Colorado, if you translate it in English literally, it means red grasshopper. So I was like, oh, I get it. So, well, that's technically all that I can say about the Blue Beetle. I really, really enjoyed this movie. It was simple. It had a lot of heart. In the areas that it needs to. It plays out the cards really well. You might find it a little bit generic. I gotta assure you that, but still, you're gonna find a bit of enjoyment into it. And while I might have nitpick a little bit of the stereotypification that this one had, it's not enough, to harm the movie. It's just kind of like nitpicks that I just give it to not try to overhype it. But still, check out this movie because, well, it has a lot of heart. No contaban con mi astucia.